throw a string over one tree, throw a string over another tree, or if you don't have two trees, throw a string over one tree and haul it up as an inverted V, and put some more string on the two ends and spread it. This is parachute cord, 8-inch parachute cord, and it's $8 at factory and army surplus, 100-foot lengths.
Ash, what gauge is the wire?
I think that is 16 or 18, and it doesn't matter at all. You can run full legal limit through any wire.
26 if you really want to go stealth.
And when you said you put it on vertically, where on does the centerpiece go? How far up? Does it matter where it goes? You put that.
The only thing that matters is if you're running it as a vertical dipole, you want your antenna going this way and your coax coming away from it at 90 degrees as far as you can.
Okay, and then
Similarly, if it's
a
a horizontal dipole, you want your coax coming down away from it.
Okay, but that end can touch on the ground. If you go vertical.
No, it can't touch on the ground, but if it's a vertical dipole, foot off the ground gives you full performance.
Okay.
And if you want to see antenna patterns, you can download a free copy of EasyNet, the software, and it'll show you that a vertical dipole has a pattern considerably lower than a ground-mounted quarter wavelength vertical, because the feed point is up quarter wavelength off the ground, so you're losing less power to the ground. And there's no need for radials with this antenna, none at all. So whether it's up in the air as a horizontal or whether it's set as a vertical, no need for ground radials. You don't have to disturb the lawn or do anything like that.
What about differences in angle of radius?
The vertical will be lower. Its peak radiation will be lower than setting it up horizontal, but the total radiation will be a little bit bigger from the horizontal because you don't have ground losses with the horizontal polarization.
Is this directional or?
If it's 16 feet high, it'll be quite directional. If it's 8 feet high, it'll be much more omnidirectional and skyway.
So I was thinking about putting it across the top of my house, and I was just.
If it's on top of a metal structure, get it way off the top.
Folks will put in a roof over the top of the trailer house, so it's wood on
It'll work. It'll work. I mean, it'd be a little bit better if you pounded in some 2x4s on the ends and strung it so it's not touching the roof. But the key thing about antennas, what I try to tell new hams when I'm trying to help set them up, everything works. Some things work better than others, but you'll work the world with this sitting on a wooden roof. You'll get through a couple calls earlier with it up in the air.
So one question about using it as a vertical dipole. What advantage is that over just using a half wave vertical without a ground plane? Because if you have a half wave antenna,
a
you
vertical
should be
dipole
able
and a half wave vertical will have exactly the same radiation pattern.
to. Okay.
The high voltage points will be if it's 16 feet high as it is for 10 meters, the high radiation point will be 8 feet high.
Okay.
Whether it's, and that's the next antenna I'm going to show, is a base-fed, or an end-fed dipole. Okay, this antenna has exactly the same radiation pattern as that antenna. The only difference is instead of being fed in the middle, it's fed at the end through a matching box, because if you feed the wire in the middle, you've got about a 70 ohm or 50 ohm induct impedance. If you feed it at the end, it's a couple thousand. So there's just a matchbox built into that to account for that. The dandy thing on this is if you live in an antenna restricted area and you can get an invisible line thrown over a tree, you can pull this up and you don't have your coax in the middle of the air feeding it. You don't have anything up there except for this, and you feed at the bottom. This is the PAR antenna. They're about $50, and they work terrific. And you can set them as a horizontal antenna, but there's no reason to pay any money for a horizontal antenna when you can build one. This little box is, it's handy in that it facilitates, you can just get one of these big fishing poles, stick your antenna up, feed it at the bottom, run your coax across the deck or the patio or whatever. No one's gonna see it at all. And at $50, you're not paying a whole lot for a commercial antenna.
Handles a couple thousand watts, huh?
This will handle 300.
Oh, okay.
And we're gonna get to an antenna that would handle a lot more, that would have the same flexibility.
How much is that?
That's,
How much
your
is
antenna, Ashton?
This is actually a 15-meter antenna, because I don't own a 10-meter one.
10-meter would be shorter, obviously.
Where are my handouts? Is there an extra, so I can just follow myself? Okay. Here's the other commercial antenna in the lot. This is the buddy stick. It's a base-fed quarter wavelength vertical, and I show it just because of how darn easy it is. And I intentionally didn't pre-assemble it so that you screw two arms in. Put a coil on it. Like this. Okay. Now there's a 10-meter antenna. There's actually a little wire radial that you attach to it and string out. And the wire radial needs to be a quarter wavelength long, so on different bands you roll it out or roll it in. It's a 10-meter antenna. Down here it's a 15-meter antenna. Now it's a 20-meter antenna, and if you move one of the leads down there, it's 40 meters. So it's a multi-band antenna. It fits in a simple bag. It is pretty darn efficient. It's a little less efficient on 40. The other bands it's going to be fine, and it's certainly easy to put up and take down, right?
How many watts?
These will do,
I think it's 300.
yeah, they're rated for that. If you're not using a coil, which you don't have to use on 10 meters, or if you buy a larger one of these, if you don't have the coiling line, it's full legal limit. So the only thing that's at all rated on that is when do you start to arc this coil. Yeah.
Where'd you make the connections?
There's a coax feed right down here.
Ah, okay.
So this is a solution for I can't leave an antenna up. This is, I don't have a tree, I got a table outside, but I can't leave an antenna up, or my wife hates antennas. Shiny aluminum, I found this helping a couple guys. Shiny aluminum antennas are not easily accepted by wives. And so nothing I'm showing today is shiny or aluminum. And painting shiny aluminum antennas does a world of good for hiding. If you paint them with green camouflage paint, which you can do, it doesn't hurt the antenna
Yeah,
any.
don't paint the joints.
Yeah.
Close to these things when you're operating.
100 watts, and you're 20 feet away, I don't think that's an issue.
Yeah, 100 watts on that's no problem. I've worked all kinds of people in Japan that have something like this on their balcony. And
Well, what are you saying, you just didn't get warm or?
What?
It's a few brain cells.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not trying to make fun of anything you said, Phil, but I know in VHF and UHF, there are significant health issues if you're really close.
10 meters is the only thing that's even close in HF,
Yeah.
and you want to be like 15 feet away from 100
Running
watts.
a couple hundred watts, something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And if you're using a converted CB rate, you probably don't worry about it at all.
Right. Okay,
Yeah.
here's the same antenna as that antenna, homemade out of wire. this is a vertical element. It's 8 feet 3 inches long. And so that's held up to a tree or whatever. And these are the counterpoises or radials or whatever you want to call them that make it a ground plane antenna. Frank, you're not doing your job very well. Okay. Hook the coax up here, and you've got an omnidirectional resonant 10-meter antenna. Don't even have a coil to find the place on. And this, because it's elevated feed point, because this is above the ground, it's going to have a little bit of a gain on a lower antenna. So it's going to act a lot like a vertical dipole in terms of radiation pattern. Maybe because these are a little bit horizontal, you're going to have a little horizontal element in the pattern. But basically, this antenna is going to work like a vertical dipole. You could easily support it on one of those fishing poles. And a trick is not to tie it to the top of the fishing pole, because then you're pulling on the part that flexes most, but instead just tape the whole antenna to the fishing pole, and it'll work great. And this is a ground plane.
How do those wires attach?
How are they attached? I took a little jumper of coax and I cut it in half, or you could take coax and solder a connection on it. And I took the inside coated bit and brought it back out of the insulation a couple inches back from where I cut it off, pulled it out, and then just soldered those.
There's 3 wires and 2 on the coax. Where are the
No,
three
there's 2 wires in the coax. Oh yeah. The 2 radials are both attached to the outer shield of the coax. All right, Frank, you won the ground plane? No, this isn't the alien baby. All right.
I want the ground plane, but I'll deed it to Frank.
Getting back to the buddy
You know, the
poll,
ground plane would work great at his QTH because he's like in the bottom of the Grand Canyon.
All right.
They have a great vertical angle coming out of it.
hey, getting back to the buddy poll, they have instructions on their website on how to build your own. And I got the MFJ makes some really long telescoping antenna parts that use that you can use just standard CB, hardware to actually use it. And I actually built something close to that. It doesn't have the different taps on it, but I had different coils made on PVC that you can actually make your own, and
Right.
it works pretty well.
The base unit here, which they've engineered very nicely, but you can go to Radio Shack and get a CB base unit that'll still take that 3/8 inch thread, and which all this stuff is a standard thread.
Yeah.
And yeah, you can easily make your own, but at $100, I don't think they're not ripping you off for what you're getting.
Yeah.
We'll check the CB department at the truck stop, and they'll have fittings like that.
Yeah.
too. And they'll have some stuff you'll never see in a
There-
hand
there's-
magazine too.
There's a guy down at the CMC turnoff that sells two-way radio stuff, and he's got some stuff similar to that, not exactly, but.
Yeah. So we just looked at the ground plane antenna, which is a simple antenna. Most of what I'm showing you fits in a baggie, right? You can put that up and no one's going to see it. The only negative is that's a resonant 10-meter antenna, and let's say beyond the 10-meter contest, you want to work all the bands instead of one band. Here's an antenna that will let you do that, which is not really much more complicated. This is 19 feet, which is a non-resonant length on any band. And these are 2 of those ground plane radials. They could either be put on the ground or they could be hung better up in the air. And the trick on this one is there's a 4-to-1 un here. What this is a voltage transformer that transforms the high SWR that you'd have on this line on any band into something that's quite low on a coax cable, so you're not losing a lot of signal and easy for a tuner to tune. So any rig with an automatic tuner or any manual tuner would easily tune this antenna on 10, 12, 15, 17, 20, 40 for sure. I just put up one of these the other day with a 24-foot radial or vertical rather than the 19, and I know it tunes on 160 and 80. Now, I'm not suggesting it has a big signal on those, because I'll show you some books that'll help you calculate that. But you can run this antenna on any ham band and it'll work. Other antennas will work better on some bands, but this will have gain on any band from 20 meter up. In other words, it will outperform a resonant quarter wavelength vertical, because a longer line up until where it's 5/8 of a wavelength long, which is what this is on 10 meters, a longer vertical will give you a lower angle of radiation and a little bit more power out. So this antenna will outperform any commercial vertical you can buy. These boxes, this is an LDG onion, 4-to-1. These are $29. So for $29 plus 19 feet of wire, you've got a vertical antenna that you can hang in a tree, will be invisible to anyone, anytime, including all wives, yours, other people's, and will outperform any commercial vertical you can buy. So I think that's a pretty good use of $29.
Is that $100? I mean, 100-watt box there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
How waterproof is that? Not
it's pretty
very.
waterproof here. I use a Ballon Designs box, which comes in those boxes that they use for electrical junctions,
Oh, yeah.
the gray boxes, which are full legal limit boxes. You gotta spend more for those. Those are real spendy. They're $69
Ooh.
for an antenna that will work the world with 1,500 watts. So there really isn't much need to buy hustlers or butternuts. I mean, the only dramas on that antenna is you need something that will hold it 19 feet in the air. So you need a fishing pole or some PVC or something. The only reason to buy a commercial vertical is if you have no trees, no ability whatsoever to hold something up structurally, and the aluminum's acting as the structure. But
How long are the radials on this thing?
I did 19 each
19
one.
on
But
each one, okay.
there's no science to that. 19, 24, 22, 43. There's some wire lengths that are really good because they're not resonant on anything. And
17's another one.
yeah,
17 feet.
Yeah.
What kind of bandwidth are you looking at?
full bands on anything above 20. And if you're using a tuner, it really doesn't matter because I'm assuming most people's rigs have a little tuner button and you just hit the button and you retune. If you're using a manual tuner, you can just write down if you're tuning it on 40 meters and it's getting a little narrow, you can write down your settings and it'll be there the next time.
And if you make turns, it'll still work.
Yeah, it works better when it's pure vertical, and if you can only go halfway up vertical and then tilt it over to the side, most of the radiation's coming from the first half of a vertical. Okay, what again? Okay, this is an antenna I've worked the world with. This is my QRP hiking antenna. And it's got two, I didn't undo this one, but it's got two, the entire antenna is built out of one 50-foot piece of speaker wire. So you go to Radio Shack, you buy 50 feet of speaker wire. You separate 22 feet on either side, and you tape it up or put a knot in it or something so it doesn't undo any more than that. So you got 22 feet on each side, and you have speaker wire as your feed line, and you bring it down, in this case, to a 4-to-1 onion, or a Ballon, because this is a balanced antenna. And my little IC703 QRP radio with the internal tuner will tune this on every amateur band. I met, the first I met anybody here, I met Phil and Bob KI0G on the air, running this antenna on a 6-meter contest. The feed line here is lossy relative to some better feed lines, but it's real cheap. And because you're probably have this thing up in the air, maybe on a fishing pole, if you're mountain topping, or hung in a tree, this part of the wire